Your job is not to engage the muscles. Your job is to sit and sink down and release them as much as you possibly can. Hi, I'm Grant Kleiman from Darsana Martial Arts. Welcome to the channel. If you like this video, please click like and subscribe, and don't forget to turn on notifications so you get updates on all our newest content. This was sort of a big revelation for me, that there were different qualities to contraction in the legs. It made sense to me kind of from the beginning that, okay, I can release tension out of my upper body and I can let that sink and settle down. And of course, over time, that idea and that experience becomes refined and increases in quality. But the legs are being loaded by all that weight that you're letting go. And I was always admonished that, hey, the legs should be working really hard. They should be burning. Monk Yenro would tell me that if you can't fry an egg on your thighs, you're not doing it right. So they should be burning, So this was always sort of the class culture. It was like, your legs should be screaming at you and you should just learn how to deal with it. And there's a degree to which that's true, in the sense that as we're doing this training, there's going to be all kinds of things that are working, things that are burning because of the engagement that they're not used to, or trembling because they just don't yet have the strength and endurance and those little muscles of the body that stabilize us to be able to do that and sustain that and support. Other areas that'll be stretching and pulling, or that you'll have a hard time letting go of because the muscle's tight. So there's actually all kinds of little discomforts that you're going to have to deal with in this transformative process. So it's sort of a misnomer, or let's say false advertisement, that Tai Chi is relaxing, in the sense of you're going to go to Tai Chi and feel like you just took a hot shower or something, or a hot bath. Although eventually in some ways you actually do feel that way, or even more so. But actually for a long time, it's a lot of work, and it can be in some ways uncomfortable, just like any other form of exercise that's going to stimulate the body to change and transform, but in its own way. So anyways, the legs were just like, it was like they're hurting, they're screaming, the muscles are burning, and that's good because you're doing the right thing. But eventually I came to realize, well, my goal is to conduct force down, and I do that through release. I do that through song, through opening up the body, opening up the joints, opening up the tissue. And I got to the point where I felt I was doing pretty good with that, all the way down to you get to about the thighs. I started working on the thighs, and I discovered I can get the mind into that space, and I can go, and I was like, whoa, like I'm working the thighs way less hard. They're not working at all, but they're not clenching. So there's like sort of degrees of tension. And because I had told myself that I'm supposed to be working my thighs, I almost was reinforcing that with my mind. I was putting extra tension that I was actually blocking force and weight and energy from sinking down through the body. And so you can go in there and you can make it worse. You can clench harder, but you can also release quite a lot. And more and more and more. And it's not that the thigh muscles won't work, but you end up starting to use the muscles and the connective tissue in a way that is like a set of springs, or something that stretches and loads, rather than is being contracted in a kind of active way. It's like it will passively contract as you release the hips and go down. The muscles will work because you're sending the force straight through the structure. And there's sort of a natural stopping point. There's a natural shelf, meaning that as I sit and sink downward, if I'm going through the points properly, if I'm opening Qi Chong and Huan Tiao, I'm feeling Ming Men, Chang Qiang at the tip of the tailbone is stretching straight downward, and Bai Hui and Hu Yin are aligning vertically more or less with Wei Zhong in the back of the knees and the bubbling well, and I sink the weight straight down. We've talked about this as aiming, right? Yes, I want to release, but there's an aim. It's like I'm sitting up at the top of a tall building trying to drop a tennis ball into a hole about the size of a baseball, right? It's like that. I'm sinking straight down. And when I do that, there is a stopping point, because the joints can only go so far with the force going straight down. No matter how much you open, you can't continue straight down. You'll have to break that line somewhere by either changing where your feet are oriented, like opening them up, right? If I turn them out, I can go much further, right? But if they're parallel, I can't. So there is a point you can drop down, and then the muscles will naturally engage to the point that they have to. And so your job is not to engage the muscles. Your job is to sit and sink down and release them as much as you possibly can. If you do that, it will help with the burning. Like, it will be a little bit less. The muscle fatigue will be less. And some of it is just, natural endurance that comes from doing something for a long time. But some of it is a kind of efficiency of how you're using the body. And when I started to learn that I'm not squatting down, I'm not using the legs to pump me up and down from the ground, I'm using the inner hips and the quad and the release to send force down through the hip, through the knee, through the ankle, through the foot, through the tissue. And then I'm moving that to release that force so that the legs become like a spring that's being loaded and unloaded by the release and by the dantian, by the center of my body. Once I figured that out, Tai Chi became a lot easier. And my endurance went way, way up. And then by training that way, it continued to go up. So I wasn't getting to this point where my legs were shaking. Actually, when I feel it is when I'm done. When I'm done and I'm like, ooh, man, my legs feel heavy. Like I must have really been working them. But it's a different feeling than you might feel if you're squatting or, going on a Stairmaster or something.